Hey, it's time to get your geek on with 2SkeGEEKS. I'm your boy Will Call, and I got my partner in there. He's driving home.
And I'm John Michael. Glad to be back.
Absolutely, man. And so I'm really excited about this show because, as you see, there are three windows on this, and it's just not John and I talking to each other with books. We have a very special guest that I happened to bump into at Baltimore Comicon at the beginning of of this month, while I was famished. No, not famished, starving because I hadn't eaten since the night before at Baltimore Comic Con. So I met him on Saturday, and his name is Mr. Keven Gardner. And what makes him so unique? And it was just happenstance, just dumb luck happenstance that I got a chance to meet this guy. Is that we were sitting right next to each other at the bar at Baltimore Comic Con for lunch, and he was talking to. Eventually, he started talking to this other cat who walked in, and I'm realizing and over listening to their conversation that these cats are in comics. So I begin to get a little nosy and intervene and inject some things. But what makes Mr. Keven Gardner so special is the fact he is an owner. He is the owner and founder of 12 Gauge Comics. It's an independent comic book label, but it was strange enough that I didn't realize in the work that I found on digging up for Keven that I have a lot of the books that he's published, um, and so uh, it's real cool. Books such as Loose Ends, I have that one. Plastic, I have vinyl. I don't have Boondock Saints, but I do have the ride. I have Sherwood, and I do not have the occult crime task force anti, or is it anti or is it anti?
Hey, you said however you want. It goes back and forth, but
Okay. And then we've got Magus or Magus and also Thomas River. Those are some of the books that I've found, and he probably has more. And as you can see behind him, he's got a ton of other books behind him, science fiction wise. I even see that $6 million man on your right shoulder there, which is real cool. Um,
dating myself if the white hair didn't give it away. Yeah.
oh, I think we both got you by a few years, but
Yeah, I'm very familiar with the $6 million man. One of my favorites. Yeah.
absolutely, man. And so, let me just do this real quick because then we can begin to do a little ask and tell for it because I'm just doing a prolonged introduction. But he's worked with some incredible creators on his titles, like Jason Latour and Brian Stelfreeze and Chris Brunner and Devin Grayson and Chuck Dixon and Gail Ann Hurd and Daniel Hilliard. I'm just naming a few of probably many more than I'm missing that he has worked with as an editor on a lot of the books that I just listed. And so I'm going to start with the first question, Keven. Um, you in 1995, I see that you were, well, let's go back before then. Let's go back because before 95, what we all have in common, the three of us on this show, is the fact that the name is 2SkeGEEKS, which is named after Tuskegee, but Keven is also a graduate of Auburn University, which is just up the road from Tuskegee. And so,
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. We were in school pretty, around the same time. Never met, but met in Baltimore because of comics. So
absolutely. Hey, common love brings us all common together and common together.
that's
So
true.
my question in that is, did you go to Auburn knowing that you were going to do comics? Or how did that go ahead?
No, no, not at all. I mean, like a lot of us, I grew up, loving comics. I learned to read because of comics. I have a very vivid memory of the first book I was given back when I was in kindergarten, and I was homesick. My dad came home for lunch, stopped by the gas station on the way in to buy me some candy, and he brought me what he called funny books. He
Mm-hmm.
used to read when he was a kid. He loved Superman and Batman and stuff, and I'd never seen any of these, and he brought me a Batman and a Spider-Man comic, and I was a fan from then on. Got hooked and wanted to learn to read so that I could read these funny books. But yeah, no, when I went to, I had been a huge comic book fan. I guess towards middle school, I kind of got out of it, discovered girls and getting in trouble and all that kind of stuff. But when I was in high school, I guess my senior year, I had started dabbling a little bit more in comics, and there were no comic book stores near me. It was just newsstand, grocery stores, gas stations, drugstores. But I found a wandering, I was downtown with my parents doing some shopping on a Saturday and saw this little toy and hobby store. So I popped in, and that's where I found, I think it was the death of the Robin, that series.
Mm-hmm.
He was getting killed, and I found that and a couple other things, and kind of rekindled stuff. And then the Batman movie came out in '89, which is when I was going into my senior year, and just really got just enthralled. So went to school at Auburn and found a comic shop there and started really getting back into it. But I went into college, I had no clue really what I wanted to do at all, but comics were never on my radar at the time as far as trying to do this professionally. And I ended up opening up a comic book shop my senior year in college. Opened up a store like May of '93. That was sort of towards the end of the boom, but there wasn't a great comic shop. I mean, there were a couple of stores, but I wanted a really good one, and that's how I kind of got into that, and then parlayed that into working for Valiant in '95. I went to work after I graduated and went up to to New York, and was in the direct sales division, worked with retailers and promotions and Comicons and all that good stuff, and just met a ton of creators.
Right. And so it was was Jim Shooter and who else were involved in the founding of that organization of Valiant Comics?
Jim Shooter, was the big guy. He was gone when I got there. He had left, and Bob Layton had stepped up to be editor-in-chief. Mm-hmm. And there was a lot of, at the time they were doing they had gotten bought by Acclaim, which was a video game company. Mm-hmm. And they had bought Valiant and were in the process.
I'm familiar with Acclaim.
I
have some video games from Acclaim. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they were huge at the time. So when I came in, a guy named Paul Fairchild, who was a dear friend of mine, who's since passed away, but he and I met at a retailer convention, and he was doing the job that I ended up taking. He got a promotion and hired me to take his job. And we kind of hit it off, and we're same age, almost same birthday, and had a lot of the same taste in comics. And so he hired me to come up there and work. And said Acclaim was spending a lot of money, and they'd hired like Dan Jurgens, coming off of a lot of the Death of Superman guys, Jackson Geiss, who was also drawing Superman, and Norm Brayfogle was doing that at the time.
And he was at the comic book. He was at the convention as well.
No, Norm. You talking about Ron Marz?
No, well, he was. I thought I saw Brayfogle's signing books at.
He passed away years ago.
Oh, well, it's not the same one then. I'm thinking about the other. I'm thinking about another artist then.
Yeah, and like Bart Sears, who was probably one of the biggest artists at the time. So we had all this great influx of talent when I went to work there. Unfortunately, I don't think their big relaunch at the time went over as well as they'd hoped, but it was a fun time to be there. I got to do my first San Diego Comicon. I was there for a week, and had never been anything like it. It was I'd been to New York. My first weekend was actually doing the show that would now be NYCC. Mm-hmm. But that was like the first week I was on staff, and I'd been to Dragon Con, and that's where I met the Gaijin studio guys like Brian Stelfreeze, Jason Pearson, Cully Hamner, Adam Hughes, Dave Johnson, Tony Harris. I mean, there was a huge roster of amazing artists at Gaijin. So I've met a lot of those guys actually through Dragon Con, and then invited them to come down to my comic shop at different times to do signings. Auburn was only hour and a half away or so from it,
right down the road.
Yeah, so had met all those guys, and then started working at Valiant, and just met a bunch of other people, and really got the bug to eventually. Actually, the first day, or the first Wednesday that I was at work at Valiant, everybody was going down to Jim Hanley's, which was a couple of blocks away. Jim Hanley's Universe was a big comic shop in New York, and they were going to get Stray Bullets #1. Dave Lapham had been a Valiant guy for many years, and I guess he left after Jim Shooter left. Mm-hmm. And
Yeah, I have a full run of that Stray Bullet. That was one of my favorites. Yeah.
Yeah, just a great
Um,
book. And
yeah,
I,
Will knows that I was following all that David
He was a
Lapham
huge
stuff.
fan.
Yeah, because he did a run on Detective Comics. Yeah.
yeah,
So
right, just one of the greatest crime guys out there for sure. And
right,
Absolutely.
but we went, everybody wanted to go to the shop as early as they could that day to get the first issue of Stray Bullets. And so we were walking there, and they were telling me, the story about how he had wanted to do something like this, and nobody would do it at Valiant, other places. So he was just doing it on his own.
Mhm.
And I was blown away that an artist like, somebody that could come in and just make their own comic and get it in comic book stores. Like, to me, that blew my mind. I just
Right.
didn't, even though I'd been a comic book shop owner, I didn't realize that an artist could just go do that. Like, how do you make that happen? And so when I read that issue, like, everybody got back to work and went to their corner and read that book, and I was like, all right, one day I'm going to do something like this. So
Right.
that's how I ended up getting into the bug to publish. It took a while. I guess around 96, 97, I actually had a business plan put together and was kind of going out and getting talent committed to work, and the market really crashed hard. That late 90s, after the boom had
After the
ended.
boom, right.
Yeah, people were coming into my comic. I still own my comic shop. They were coming into the comic shop, and instead of trying to buy all these books, they were trying to sell them. And then, there's
Right.
only so many copies of Shadowhawk 2, Volume 1, or
That
Volume 2, Issue 1 that you need, and
uh,
and people would leave mad. They would leave really mad. They'd come in with their long box and say, "Hey, this stuff is worth $5,000," and I'd be like, "Yeah, I can give you like $200 because I've got all this stuff and I don't need any more of it." There was no way to sell it on eBay or anything at the time, right? That didn't exist, so it burned a lot of people. It was curious. I would be curious to see, like, if the internet had been a thing, and eBay and stuff like that. How it would have changed, because I bet a lot of people just threw their books away. They got mad and stuff. But anyway, yeah. So then I guess it was 2003. Time flies, but about around 2003, Doug Wagner, who writes a lot of the 12 gauge books, like Plastic and Vinyl, and he wrote a lot of the Ride issues, the first couple of books actually, and he's worked for Marvel and DC and stuff too. But he and I had gotten to be good friends, and he actually had moved to Auburn, just complete dumb luck. Like, his wife wanted to go back to school, his wife at the time, and he moved back to Auburn, and he and Cully Hamner were best friends from high school. So Cully introduced us, and I can't remember where he was moving from, but he wasn't anywhere near Auburn. But so we got to be good buddies, and we're always talking about, oh, if we could start a comic book company, what would we do? What would the books be? And
right.
Anyway, time had flown. I'd gotten married, sold my comic shops, and was just doing a regular day job. And I found out we were having our first child, and I called Doug, and I was like, if I don't do this now, I will never find the time to do it. So let's do a book. Let's do it. So I'd saved up some money, and in 2004, the Ride #1 came out through Image, and that was how I got into publishing. Of course, I didn't publish that. I packaged it. I kind of, I act as like a producer role, I guess. If I do have a lot of books that we've published under the 12 gauge banner over the years. But started out at Image, a lot of books there, and then when I got the license to the Boondock Saints, Image at the time didn't want to do licensed books, and so I was going to have to do it on my own or partner with somebody like Dark Horse or whatever. And I've done some books with them too, but at the time they didn't really have a creator-owned line like what I was trying to do. So that was the first book, I guess, that I published, and that was under the 12 gauge banner. And then I went and set up an account with Diamond and all that stuff, and did a fair amount of books on my own. And it was just a lot of, I'm not a full-time publisher, I'm a part-time guy, and not having books out every month makes it tough to gain traction with retailers. Out of sight, out of mind, if you're not there every month, putting a book out. And so partnered back up with Image around 2017, I think. Did a good bit of books through them ever since. I've done a couple with Dark Horse.
What you doing, Dark Horse?
We did just a book that just came out. I just actually wrapped up. It was a 5-issue miniseries called Survival, which was an old idea that I'd been playing with for years. It was basically Red Dawn meets vampires.
Mm.
And I don't know, the idea came to me because I was a big fan of Red Dawn, when it came
Right.
out, like middle school, or maybe I was in a freshman or something, but love that movie. And I thought the title was perfect for a vampire movie. And then I said, well, I'll mash these two things up. And I actually reached out, this was years ago, reached out to whoever owned the rights to the Red Dawn, and was trying to get the license just to use the title and the premise. And they would sell me the license, but they wouldn't approve the book until after I had paid them for the license.
Okay.
And I'm like, well, that doesn't really make sense, because if you won't allow me to do the vampire version, I don't know what I'll do with a license. So it just kicked around for a while, and then came up with some new twist on it and whatnot. And I pitched it to Sean Lewis, who's a big time writer on Spawn right now and a bunch of other Image books. And but yeah, so it kind of is what it says it is. It's just a fun action movie, but with militarized vampires from Russia. And it was a lot of fun. So we did that with Dark Horse, and also did a few years ago did a Civil War, fictional Civil War story called Kill Whitey Donovan.
Yeah, I have that one too.
Do you? Okay, yeah,
I have killed Woody Donovan. Yeah.
really love
I
that
think
book.
John, we talked about that a few years ago, didn't we?
Yeah, I have it. I didn't get a chance to fully read it. Yeah, I have it in my collection too. Yeah, I do. Yeah, we
Yeah.
did. We talked about that.
Yeah, that's one where Brian Stelfreeze actually was the editor on that book. He took my editor hat.
Ah.
When I got the pitch came in, he was the first person I called, and I said, what do you think about this story? And he was like, man, we have got to do it. So he actually picked the artist, Natalie Barahona. She was an unknown comic artist. She was working in animation, but somebody he had worked with before, and really wanted to, she wanted to draw some comics, and she did a fantastic job with that book.
Yeah, I forgot about that one because I did see it yesterday and I was doing my research, but I forgot to write that down.
I always tell people, I've done a lot of books that you just don't have any idea. People don't pay attention like to credits, and I don't either a lot, but there's so many books that 12 Gauge has produced, but they're under the Image icon or Dark Horse or whatever. So, it's funny too, like people will reach out, like actually Sean Lewis, he read Plastic and he was like blown away by it, and he started looking in the credits and saw the 12 Gauge thing. So he sent me a cold email, like through our, contact email. I was like, man, I want to do something with you guys.
Right.
It's fun stuff. So, but yeah, I'm cool with that. Like, I don't, it would be fun to have a gigantic company, something like, Boom or some of these other guys. But at the same time, for me, it remains fun. I never have more than like 3 titles in production at once. Usually it's like 2. And I also give creators I work with, I work around their schedules so that I can work with the guys I want to work with. So sometimes it takes a couple of years for a 5-issue miniseries or whatever to get done. So we just hopefully it doesn't take that long, but sometimes it does.
Sometimes, right.
But when you're working with great artists, it's worth it. To me, I would rather have a catalog of books where you can look at 90% of those books and you can say, man, those guys killed it. I'm not going to say we're perfect. Sometimes we've taken some chances and they didn't work or whatever, but you can't say that we're one of those companies that throws everything against the wall, sees what sticks. And,
right.
I try to do books, a handful of comics that I've come up with ideas for, not many, that I've put into production and got creators that liked them and wanted to do them. But for the most part, it's, usually creators that come to me and say, I've got this idea, can you help me get it going? That's like how Loose Ends came about. That was Jason Latour's first writing.
Man, yeah, that. I have the single issues for Loose Ends, and then I bought the compilation, the graphic novel. Oh man.
Yeah.
And you know what? Inside Loose Ends, there is this image. Part of it, if I'm not mistaken, the scenery is from Miami. Is that correct? Are you aware of that?
Yep.
Yeah, I grew up in Miami, so there's this particular image in there. There's this large turn. I think it's on 195 where it goes to I-95. But man, that image is so spot on. I said, man, that if it's a comic book, but I mean, it could be a photograph. Yeah. that thing grabbed me. But I love the story, loose ends.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a simple story, but
Yeah,
also one that you get engrossed in, and
yeah.
the flashbacks and Chris Brunner, Enrico Renzi, they had done, or Chris had done a couple of issues of a Batman Legends of the Dark Knight. It was one of those kind of like they had different creative teams running in and out of that book. It was sort of
Yeah,
like
that was the whole point of it, because the legends were actually the writers and the creators, not
yeah.
the
And so
yeah.
he had been published, but he didn't have nobody really knew who he was all that much. But he was at Heroes Con in Charlotte. That's sort of a home base show that I've always done, and we launched a lot of books there. And but he and Rico were buddies, and they came up and showed me the portfolio and stuff they were working on. They had never worked on anything that had been published together.
Okay.
And so I saw Chris's pages, and I was like, oh, I've got to find something to do with you, and he actually had drawn a pinup in like, I can't remember exactly what it was from. Maybe it was a cover or a pinup, but it was in Chinatown, or like a futuristic Chinatown or something.
Okay.
And I reached Ron Marz, and I were talking about doing something, and I sent him that image. I said, this is a guy. We've got to, like, I'd love for you to figure something out for him. And he came back with the story that he wrote for Chris, which was basically all in Chinese.
Oh, wow.
So it was 11-page story. And it was, basically you're following this cop who's looking for a perp. And and when there's dialogue, because it's in Chinatown, everybody's speaking Chinese, and then there's a twist at the end, and there's no English dialogue until the last page, and then you figure out what you thought you knew was going on was nothing at all what was going on. But and Chris and Enrico's like, well, it's colors, it's I'm a colorist, and this is in black and white, so what am I going to do, and he came in with a digital zip tone, which wasn't really being used a lot at the time. And he dropped the zip stuff on it, made it look like it was something that was, drawn in the 70s. And
Wow.
Chris's pages, and that's like, that was our fourth book, and of the ride. The first two was one story with four artists. It was Cully Hamner, Brian Stelfreeze in issue 1, and then Georges Ginty, who's on The Mandalorian right now. And
thank you for helping me figure out how to say his name, because I could never figure it out. George's GT. Got it.
He and Dexter Vines did chapter 3, and Jason Pearson was the closer, and then Adam Hughes did the covers for the 2 issues. But that was our first. That was one big crime story, more action than crime, to be honest. But and then issue 3 was Chuck Dixon, and Dave Johnson did the cover to that one.
Yeah, I looked it up last night in my comic shop. I was tracking your work, man. I was digging through.
Yeah. And Cully Hamner, actually, that was the first story. I let him write a story in that issue 3, it was beautifully illustrated. And then, but for issue 4, that was the one where Ron came up with this really cool story, and Chris just absolutely murdered it. And the other feature in there was a Chuck Dixon and a guy named Rob Haynes, who he's one of those artists, and he could have a huge career in comics, but he didn't want to keep illustrating, like, the sequentials. He loves to do layouts. Right. And his layouts are amazing, but he just didn't have a lot of interest in drawing sequential books. So anyway, he drew that last one, and both of them, and completely unrelated, like these guys weren't communicating. But Ron wrote a story in Chinatown, and then Chuck wrote a Vietnam story, and tied. The thing about the book is that when I was starting to publish, or wanted to publish, I was trying to figure out a way that I could get all the guys that I was friends with to work for me. But I knew that they didn't have, tons of time, because they're drawing Spider-Man and Batman and, all these Image books and stuff. And so they weren't going to be able to commit to doing a miniseries. So at that point, it had to be an anthology. The problem with anthologies is they don't sell. So not great. Like Dark Horse Presents was around forever, but, it ebbed and flowed depending on who was in it. But and the issue with anthologies is that it's usually, here's a superhero story, and here's a Western and a sci-fi story, in this anthology. So I wanted to do something with crime and action, potentially horror. I thought that would be fun. And so I tried to think of something that would unify the book, that would be a hook that would come back. And so I made it was all about one car. this 1968 Camaro, a real limited edition Camaro, and that's just because I was also a car guy.
Right.
And that way we could tell stories from the late 60s on up. And the different and there were a lot, the rules were very loose, but it was basically, it was set in the real world, and the car had to be featured in the story, and then whoever had possession of the car at the time, something life altering had to happen.
Right.
That was sort of the framework for what we went in with. But that fourth issue, when Chuck said, "Oh, I'm going to do a Vietnam story," I'm like, "How are you going to tie Vietnam in?" And he did. So, but I had these two stories, and we called it Foreign Parts. And that was the one where, when it came out, I was like, all right, this title has really got a future as far as fun and interesting storytelling. And we kind of had set the bar pretty high at that point. I had a lot of people wanting to do the book, and I was like, you're good, but I don't know if you can match, I was trying to at least keep up with what had come before, because the roster is just insane. So books, I probably could have, Image actually had wanted it to be a more regular thing, but I just knew I couldn't pull it off at the level that I wanted to keep it at. I didn't want there to be stories where you would say like, "Oh man, this was the favorite." I didn't want that. So
right.
And we're coming up next year is the 20th anniversary of that book, which is like insane to me that it has flown by so fast. But done a lot of other stuff beside the ride, obviously, but that was the one that started it all.
I ordered them last night. I had the one with Adam Hughes cover with the I can't remember the ride and whatever it was, girl with the little pink flurry thingamajig on.
Oh yes, okay, yeah. That was the one. That was actually our 15th anniversary miniseries that Doug Wagner wrote, and Daniel Hilliard, who's the team from Plastic. I got them to write so Doug wrote the main story, and we brought back the character from the very Samantha Vega. She was our hero in the first issue, or the first little story we did, and so we brought her back for this 15th anniversary thing. So she had just gotten out of prison. She was in the story, like, I mean, she's a rookie cop, and she decides to do what's right over what's legal,
right?
And the code. But so in our story, she had been in prison ever since, and had just gotten out, and she's trying to find her life again. And she went to work as security at a exotic dance club, not a strip club per se. But
I got it. I read that. I read that one for sure.
Yeah, so to keep it the anthology feel, I wanted to do a big story since it's been 15 years. And I love working with Doug and Daniel, and they're a great team. But I wanted to have the feel of the anthology, so we put little backup stories with some of my favorite artists, like Tom Coker, did a chapter, and Cully came back and did a chapter. So we had all these little pop-up, little short stories in the back about each one of the characters that was a dancer at the club. And so that was a really fun little story.
Yeah, I recall it. Yeah, I think I may have read it during COVID, I believe. But go ahead, John.
Yeah, I wonder. So, Ride, is that available in a collected edition right now?
Well, the first issue, the first volume is out of print. They're all available digitally, but I'm actually working. Hasn't been announced or anything, but we're working on a big 20th anniversary like omnibus.
Okay.
We hope to put out next year. I'm trying to logistically get that all figured out, because it's going to be over 500 pages.
Oh, okay.
It'll be pretty massive, but that's, hopefully we'll be able to announce something early next year about that, and get a really nice big collection. So the volume 2 is still available. Those are still in stock, and that is an all Brian Stelfreeze book, because he came back and did a 3-issue miniseries featuring a character he created in that first issue called Lacey, a little teenage assassin. And we had also done a spinoff with her called Gun Candy, which kind of told her origin story. So we collected all that into the volume 2 of the ride. And then there's the volume that is that 15th anniversary. So so there's 2 volumes in print. The first issue, I mean, the first volume, you can find it, but it's just not like, you can't order a new copy.
No.
And then there's a handful of stories that have not been collected that we were planning on doing, and it's getting it on the schedule at Image is tough, and we were trying to figure out, like, well, we're gonna have to put the first one back in print. We needed a little bit better sales on the 15th anniversary thing. to justify going back to print with a couple of new trades of old material. But so all those are available digitally. I've got back issues, I think, probably on our website. But yeah, hopefully this time next year we'll all be talking about the great omnibus.
I'll definitely be buying it from you, I went, I didn't buy it from your shop because I saw something shop now, but I wasn't quite sure. And I didn't know if the site was up to par, because sometimes it was like shop now, you hit the link and then you.
Well, yeah, we've got some problems. Actually, I won't throw the web host under the bus.
I didn't click, so there's no bus here. I didn't click.
Well, the GoDaddy bought our web host and just migrated everything over, and nothing is working correctly on the website. So I've got guys actually working on it. I had a meeting about it Friday, and we're going to go ahead and do a big refresh anyway. But yeah, actually, if we do have a Kickstarter we did a little bit ago, but now the book's finally in print. It was a graphic novel called Narco. It's sort of it's a Alfred Hitchcockian style mystery, and that was funded. And we did Plastic, which was it's set in the same universe with Plastic, which was our crazy serial killer.
Right.
That's our most successful title of all time, which still blows my mind. But so we did a Kickstarter with a oversized hardcover of Plastic, and then this new graphic novel called Narco. And Doug Wagner and Daniel did both, and Narco's like the newest thing that they've got together. But we just put it up at BackerKit for if you missed the Kickstarter, you can go in, and we actually just started sending the links out. But there, I think we have some of the I think the Ride Volume 2 and the Burning Desire both on sale there, and along with some other books that that's not on our website, but it's on BackerKit. So if you go to 12 Gauge social media, Twitter at 12 Gauge Comics, or Instagram, we've got a link in bio.
I'll find it in Instagram. Okay.
Yeah. So we're trying to, the website is not optimal at the moment, but
it happens.
Still have some way to buy some stuff.
It happens. Yeah. Well, I bought the first volume last night on my comic shop for sure.
Oh, good.
And the second. So yeah, I was excited. I was just going through trying to find things that I also bought the occult thing by that Rosario Dawson did. Yeah,
the Occult Crimes Task Force.
Yeah, I bought that one as well.
That was nuts, man. That was same thing, like Heroes Con. I know these artists that had come up with this, the writer and artist that were working on this book with her through her uncle is a comic book artist, Gus Vasquez. And he was one of the artists of is it Big Hero 6, the Disney Pixar movie?
Yes. That's the name
comic of it. That was turned into a movie. But yeah, I mean, Rosario was an up and coming actress. She had done Dwayne Johnson movie, The Rundown, and a couple other things, and had just I think finished filming Sin City, and we knew that was going to be big. And so they reached out to me and they're like, hey, we're friends with Rosario. We pitched her this idea, and she's going to be in the comic. She's helping create it. Will you help us get it published? And I'm like, yeah, sure, man, like absolutely. And right when we started working on it versus when it came out, like she blew up because Sin City had come out. She was about to be in a Tarantino movie, the Grindhouse thing. So she came in, did conventions with us. She did the Heroes Con in Charlotte. She went to San Diego Con with us, and she's like the biggest star that was on the floor. Like at these, especially at Heroes Con, it was like crazy.
I can imagine.
She's a comic geek. I mean, she loves comics, she loves toys, all that stuff. So for her, it was just a lot of fun. And for like two or three Comicon cycles, she would come to hang out with us at our booth, and she just kept getting big. By the last time, it was the security was like, "Yeah, y'all have got to stop. She can't come back."
Yeah, that's amazing, man. Yeah, because I was shocked when I saw that again. Just doing my research, and I was like, "Oh, she did a book with you guys." And then I saw with the little blurb at the top of it, where she was talking about writing dialogue was. And that this is something that she was accustomed to. She's of course accustomed to delivering dialogue, but writing is a different beast.
Yeah, she had a lot of fun. She really cared about the comic, and a lot of hard work went into it. And it's really surreal to look back on it too, because it was just so nobody else was doing anything like that. I mean, it wasn't my idea. I was just lucky enough to jump on board and be able to help make it happen. But after that happened, I remember I think it was a year or two after, Rosario was at our booth at San Diego, and Sam Jackson comes by, and he just had announced his comic that he was going to star in. I think Boom made it, and I was like, okay, everybody's copying us now.
Yeah,
That was kind
yeah.
of funny. Like they waved at each other, but yeah, it's nuts.
So let me ask you this: going back to San Diego Comic Con, where you were probably one of the earlier versions for, or when did you go roughly the first time?
The first time I went would have been like summer of '95, I guess. That was the
Okay.
first time I went. So it was a big show. I'd never been, but at the time, I mean, it was maybe 30,000 people or something.
Wow.
I mean, now it's 100,000, but
Yeah.
then the convention center was half as big as it is now. But they did have like the upstairs part. But that '95 show, all the publishers, there was no Hollywood presence. So it was all the comic book publishers,
Right.
and everybody was still kind of riding the boom. I think the Valiant booth the year before, I didn't ever see pictures of it, but apparently it was like a double decker. Like they
Wow.
had an upstairs level, and it was, and so ours was, everybody was disappointed when we got there because the booth was not nearly as big. Where to me it was massive. But yeah, DC, Marvel, and I mean Image, everybody was there with a huge presence, and it was all comics. There was there were vendors selling
Hmm.
T-shirts and collectible toys and comics and all that stuff, but it was just comics. I mean, there was nothing else. And I guess when 10 years later, 2004, that summer, I went back as a you know comic book person that was publishing a book, and it was actually, we were set up, Doug and I were there promoting the ride issue. We had issue 1 and 2 out, I think, and right next to us was Robert Kirkman, who
Hmm.
was Walking Dead, and it was sort of a culty thing. But we were hanging out talking all weekend. He was from Kentucky, I was from Alabama, and Doug was born in Alabama, so we were sort of like the rednecks hanging out together. Who would have ever guessed? In fact, I threw the idea of let's doing a crossover of the ride, like a Halloween special, when it would be like a zombie, drive one
Right.
of the zombies, and we talked. I mean, it never happened, but it was kind of funny. Like that was, but that year, it was like a year or two after that. Whenever Tomb Raider came out,
Hmm.
Angelina Jolie showed up at the show to promote, because they had expanded the convention center at that point. They had the big Hall H, and she showed up there to promote Tomb Raider, and that was the day that it really changed. And this was funny because people were saying, how back in those days there weren't smartphones, right? So
Right.
everybody was saying that she had landed on the rooftop of the convention center in a helicopter, and like gone down into which was not true, but that's what that was the room going around on the floor. And then a couple of years later, Twilight was there, the cast of Twilight, and that's where I think the show kind of jumped the shark, and it really became all about Hollywood, and a lot less about comics, which is unfortunate. I mean, I exhibited that show from 2004 to like 2012, in
Hmm.
publisher, and loved it. But every year after, like the around that Twilight time, the comic sales got worse and worse. Everybody just wanted free stuff, and we weren't seeing the return in our investment, because it's really expensive to set up there,
Yeah.
and hotels and travel, and you got to have a bunch of people to run your booth, and we had a big booth too. So but yeah, anyway, I still love to go. Don't get me wrong. I just don't love to spend all the money to exhibit, so I don't do that anymore.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. Well, we thought the same thing, similar, not as nowhere near to the extent of San Diego, but we thought the same with Dragon Con, quite honestly. Because when I got back into comics in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, and so the first comic book convention was Atlanta Comicon, wasn't it, John?
Yes, the one that we went to, yeah,
In the little
Atlanta
hotel?
Comic Con. It was, you're saying, where was the venue?
The first one was was off of 85 North, one of the hotels off 85 North, just north of Atlanta.
Well, I think they were using the Gwinnett Civic Center.
Oh yeah. I've been to that one. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
No, I thought the first one we went to was at a hotel. I thought, or was it? No, you're right. You're right. It was Gwinnett Civic Center. You're right, John. And that's where we first. That's where we first met Brian Michael Bendis and George.
Right, correct. Yeah, that was the Civic Center.
Yeah, George's Genty and David Mack. It wasn't a huge show. It was a small show. And so that was my first experience with a comic book convention, was the Atlanta Comicon, and then started expanding and going to more different shows. And Dragon Con at the time, still in the early 90s, was still pretty comic book heavy, but I'm sorry, early 2000s was still pretty comic book heavy. But by the time we got to the tens of the 2000s, it just got silly, and it became a Comic-Con show. I'm sorry, Costume Con and whatever else. And
yeah, it was never like when that was the first show I ever attended, that summer of '93, or I guess it was. And you went downstairs into the Marriott or one of the big hotels, and like the downstairs, the whole exhibit space was the convention. And for comics, the comic book portion, but it was huge. I mean, there was a lot, it was a lot of publishers there, and Valiant was set up there, and DC was there, and others, and tons of comic book artists. And that's where I met, I think Adam Hughes was the first guy I met. I went by and got a sketch. He did a Supergirl for me for $20.
Wow.
And I asked him to invite him down to my comic shop, because he was doing the Justice League, or had just done Justice League, and I was a huge fan of that book, and in Justice League Europe, I guess. And was it Justice? And no, it was just Justice League International, I think is what they were calling it. And it was so funny, and great, just a great book. And so anyway, yeah, it was a great comic show. And by the time, I remember when I put our first book out, I think I sat up there with some of the Gaijin guys, and I was like, man, there's no reason to be here. Like, there was no interest in comics, hardly. It was really fantasy and sci-fi and costumes, and that's great. I mean, for whatever works. I'm glad that. I mean, it's a huge show, and I'm glad it's successful, but it's not for a really big comic show anymore. It's like where San Diego is pop culture. You still had all the comic book publishers there, exhibiting and doing panels and stuff. But like Dragon Con, it really is just more about, at least the last time, I have not been in probably 10 years.
Me neither.
But I mean, it's fun. I mean, I remember the last time I was there was some really cool, like there was some Star Wars stuff going on, and it was cool guests. And I did meet, back when in the 90s, I did get to meet Stan Lee there for the first time.
Wow.
He signed a couple of my books, and at the time it was funny. Like, I think we waited in line like 15 minutes, and we're like complaining.
15.
Yeah, how long the line was.
Man, please.
Just different world, right? I mean,
different times.
Yep.
Because I know when I saw him and got his autograph at Comic Palooza in Houston in 2000, I want to say 13, somewhere in that time frame. Yeah, and of course by then I knew he was getting old. I was like, if I don't get it now, I'm not going to get it. So made the sacrifice, and I think it was like $200 per autograph or some crap like that, with a 3-4 hour wait.
Yeah, I think I probably paid like, I think we bought tickets, like you had to get a ticket, and maybe $10 or $20 an autograph or something, which was, that was probably 93, 94, 95, in that range, when I would go up there, and I would go look for stuff. And that's how I discovered Heroes Con. Actually, I guess the Gaijin guys had told me about it, but as far as being a good comic book show. So when I owned my shop, I would go up there for the weekend, and I would buy stuff that my customers were looking for. I'd have a list of old books or whatever, and that's still today is still a great comic book shop. It has a store. Convention. There we go. That's what I'm trying to say.
And all the above. Yeah, because
they've got a great comic book store too. Heroes Aren't Hard to Find in Charlotte. It's a great comic shop.
Yeah, I bought some books from them. I bought some books from them at Baltimore just now. I think what did I buy? Yeah. I bought the first appearance of Doom Patrol from them.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And I had to And John, I still don't know what the hell happened to it. I had to repurchase my first Brother Voodoo, so I bought that from Heroes on Hard to Find as well. So
It's probably in one of your boxes, stuck to the back of another book somewhere.
probably,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
still can't find it. But so I got tired and just bought another one. I was like, because the prices dropped on it. So, but yeah,
Oh,
Heroes aren't hard to find. Yeah, they're good folks, and I know John and another friend of ours who what's Matt's show called? Matt Odom. He's another channel guy, but he does a lot of Golden Age books, Kevin.
Yeah.
But I know they've been begging me to get back down to Charlotte for Heroes.
yeah, you should.
That's my favorite show. Heroes Convention. That one just about covers the full gamut. That's my favorite. Yeah.
Did you set up a booth at Baltimore, or what was? Because what brought you to? But of course, comics. But what brought you to Baltimore Comic Con this past?
Well, it was a last second visit, so no, I didn't set up. I was actually up there handling some business for Jason Pearson's estate.
Mm.
So some cool stuff actually. I mean, and yeah, so that's what got me on a quick flight. So it's either go there or go to California, and I was able to go meet the guy there. So that was since the East Coast is a little bit. Not that I mean I really contemplated, like, if I had the time I would have much rather gone to San Diego, but
right.
It was like, okay, and I do have a couple of friends in San Diego, but it's like I'll see a lot more people at Baltimore and be in the air, half the time. So and it's a great show.
Absolutely. And I keep trying to get John to come up there and trying to convince these cats to come up to Baltimore. That's one of the best shows, I've ever done. But I also want to go to New York. It'll probably be next year because just trying to make a few more little bit of moves on a house renovation but once I get that sucker squared away and the income starts flowing, and I'm going to take my butt up to New York.
Good show. Yeah. I think New York Comicon is sort of more like San Diego than San Diego is.
Yeah.
Like, to me, I haven't been in a while, but I did. It's as expensive as San Diego Con. I can promise you that, to exhibit. But we, I guess it was the year that we were doing the Boondock Saints, and that they had the second movie was coming out. That's how that comic book license came around. But I exhibited up there, and it was I just felt, this feels like a comic book show much more. I mean, they have celebrities and stuff, and it's kind of got more into the celebrities than it used to be, but it's still about comics. I think that more so than maybe a little bit more than San Diego, but that's a good show. Like, for my money, like, I'd love to go to Heroes Con and Baltimore, probably the two most comic centric shows I've attended. I've heard some good things about some other shows. I just haven't made it. I don't do the whole circuit anymore, but a lot of shows are just pop culture shows now. But those two are great. Like, you can always count on a lot of great comic book artists and writers, and a lot of great comics. They're and exhibitors, or a lot of publishers are exhibiting, and so that's always a good shows to go to. And obviously New York is that on steroids. So I do need to get back up to the New York Con. I've missed that one.
Yeah, those are the two I want to do. Heroes, I'll do Heroes next year in New York. Those are the two I surely want to get to see, in particular because I know with the majority of publishers being from the New York area from back in the day, traditionally when we were kids and before, I can imagine the treasure troves of books that they have from those store vendors and from that area.
A lot of great original art, of course, too. I could have gotten, one of those time machine things, right? That first New York show I did, I actually was joking with Jimmy Palmiotti about this year or so ago. He was talking about, there was a cover, I think it was issue number 1 of Vamps.
Mm-hmm.
Boland did the cover, and it was just like an extreme close up of the girl's face with her, the vampire teeth showing. So that it was for sale at that show, the original.
Wow.
And I had just moved to New York, just gotten that job. Rent was 5 times what I was used to paying and everything.
Right.
And I saw that hanging there, and I don't think it was that much. It wasn't so much money that I couldn't afford it. It was just too much money that I couldn't afford to eat if I bought it.
Right.
And I was sitting there looking at it, and I walked by and I was just my God, it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. You know, like just the real cover to that book. And I thought about it, and I looked at I went to, checking account, like had my checkbook or whatever, and where you used to balance your checkbook in the back. Okay,
Yeah.
I can write if he'll take a check or hold, let me hold hold it for me till I get
Exactly.
back. So I went back. I convinced myself. Actually, I think I went and talked to Paul, and I'm like, if I can't eat, will you feed me some, macaroni and cheese or whatever for a couple of weeks, if I'm totally broke, because I think I'm going to buy this. And I went back, and Jimmy was buying it.
Oh.
And he was joking on Twitter because he had, I think he had sold it or something, but it came up, and I was like, man, yeah, that was. But back in those days, I mean, comic book art was just, it was plentiful, and it was not all that expensive. I mean, maybe that cover was probably $1,500 or something. Like it was. I can't even imagine what it would sell for now. But
Absolutely. I got a chance to. I met Alex Ross at a show one time, and he had some art on sale, painting. It was, I think he was asking, yeah, maybe 12, 13, something like that. I was like,
oh yeah,
boy, now.
I have a
Oh,
friend,
Lord.
an artist friend. I won't throw his name out, but he was an artist in Atlanta, and he was a part-time collector or dealer. So he would make trades and whatever, and he had multiple Dark Knight pages.
Mm,
It was like early or like mid-90s, and
wow.
I was trying to buy one off of him because he had them framed and hanging up, and he's like, I'll sell them eventually. I actually need to reach out to him and see I know he sold them by now, but he wouldn't sell them at the time. He's, it's one of those, if I get ready to sell it, I'll let you know. And, yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of pages going up for auction. I saw somebody posting about that on Twitter or something the other day. There's like Heritage Auctions has got a couple of key pages that are going up for sale. And I mean, there's just no telling what they're going to go for.
Yeah, because I just saw an email the other day regarding Heritage. No, it was in Key Collector apps, because they had a rundown of a bunch of sales from the last or most recent Heritage auction. So yeah, I can't imagine. Oh yeah, and I've passed up on some good stuff, man. I guess we all have.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Like
if
kick ourselves.
if it was one of those pages where Batman appears on the horse,
Mm,
I think that's maybe the center page.
I
But
think
yeah,
the
that
one,
page would be unaffordable where he's on that horse.
the one
Yeah.
where he kills the Joker is
that one.
Oh,
that's
oh my
that's one that's up
goodness.
for sale. Yeah,
Woo!
no
Oh
telling.
yeah, that's going to be through the roof.
Dude,
Mm.
oh man, I remember the first time I read that thing, man. I was like, holy crap, this good.
Yeah, that was one of the books that I read. I remember I was walking like freshman first week of class, and walking around all over campus and stuff. And at Auburn, there's the campus ends and the city begins. So
Right.
you literally like, and it's kind of this iconic thing called Toomer's Corner. There's used to be a drugstore there, and
Yeah,
over Toomer's Corner.
yeah, I used to buy supplies from there. Yeah,
Oh,
because
really?
I finished in architecture, so I used to go to that well, I guess the bookstore there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
J&M.
Toomer's Corner.
Yep.
Yeah, I used
Yep.
to go there a lot. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's
sure
so
did.
funny. Yeah, I got a double minor in art, so it was right across the street was J&M. That's where we bought all our art supplies. But over that Toomer's drugstore, there was a comic book store at the time when I was a freshman, and it was like the first day or two of class, and I walked up there to get lunch or get a lemonade or something, and I saw like a Batman poster, and I walked up, and that's where they had the Dark Knight returns, and I had never seen it before. And I think I paid, that was another one of those things where, don't have a lot of money because I'm a freshman in college.
College, man. Hell.
Yeah. And I think I ended up buying, I might have bought one or two at a time and then came back and got the next, whatever. But once I read the first one, I was like, oh my God. Like, I thought when they killed Robin, it was, ramping things up, but I had not seen that before. So yeah, after that 89 Batman movie came out, I was completely hooked on comics, and I guess I never have gotten rid of the bug ever since. So
No need for that, man. I mean, that this love is the stories, the artwork, and of course, I'm going to ask you a question pretty soon about the editing piece. but all of it together it's an amazing piece of storytelling, and it's an amazing media that of course is one of the oldest forms of storytelling anyway. So
Right.
you guys, there's no way that you can just kind of like just gloss over this thing like it's just funny books. No, if you really take your time and look, it's pretty incredible stuff. But going back to the editing piece, uh when you're editing, are you how are you, what is your procedure? How about that when with editing with your books that
Well,
you're putting out? Go ahead.
I'm really lucky the fact that I started out. I never had any editing, no practice or anybody teach me anything. I mean, I saw it going on. I had friends that were editors, but when I was at Valiant, I was really, I was in marketing, right? And
Right.
I would hang out with the artists because at that time at Valiant they had a bullpen, and a lot of the artists like Sean Chen and Bernard Chang, other guys that were in the city, they would come in and work. Usually they'd come in the afternoons later in the day, because artists are,
That guy.
night owls, So
Yeah.
it was quieter and those guys would all hang out. But I would hang out with them because I just moved up there and hell, I didn't know my way around. And there was no, you had to get a map to find your way around the city. So I would hang out with all the artists. And I considered myself a failed artist, but I still loved it, but I never had any formal training to be an editor. But I was really lucky the fact that like I had a sense of story, I guess, but I'm not a writer either. But I can tell, that's the one thing, that I think I have a good idea if a story works or not, and can kind of point out, like, I kind of like to just roll the bowling ball and then, you're not really making it move, but you're over there, when you bowl and kind of push it to the side, the ball goes where you want.
Right.
That's kind of the way I do editing. I mean, I bring on guys, that know what they're doing. And we always agree on the front end what the story is, what we want it to be, right?
Okay.
And I think the worst thing you can ever get, you see this a lot with Hollywood, with movies and stuff, is they have the basic idea, but they don't always have a script even locked before they start shooting.
Right.
That's just a recipe for disaster. So like I said, I work with guys that know what they're doing, and I kind of just try to keep everybody on schedule. The fun part for me is breaking the outline, and being able to, put in my 2 cents on stuff, and that is fun. I don't make it like, if you come to me with your idea, it's your thing, right? And if I like it, then we're going to do it, right? That's sort of the way I look at it. And I'm not going to come in and try to make it into of my own thing. It's to help you make what you're doing better. Like I would never force a note on anybody. So I have that luxury. I rarely am just I do some books that are work for hire, just don't do many, So yeah, for my process is put these teams together. Let's break the story out and get an outline that we're all happy with. And we try to make it like where the writer is turning in at least the first full issue before we get started. And I think most artists that I've worked with, I think they do better work when they know the whole story, or like that they can see the 20 or 24 pages or whatever the count is.
Right.
They can read that and get a good grasp of, all right, I got to get to this point, and we do like Daniel and Doug, like their brains are almost connected, even though, Daniel's in Spain and Doug's in Utah. So they can work like we like Doug will, like, I don't edit those books at all, really. I mean, those guys right now, like they just hum, I'll give them, I rarely even throw out a note to those guys. I just keep the schedule on and enjoy the ride, because like Doug will shoot him scenes, like, cause like I said, we do lock the story. So each issue, Doug will come in with a breakdown, like, hey, here's act 1, 2, 3. And so he'll feed pages to Daniel, because like they just, they're in sync. But usually I like to get the full script and then give that to the artist and then let him do his thing and breakdowns and but when you work with great artists, you don't really have to give a lot of notes, and great writers and artists, covers. I work with some great cover artists, and I just give them an idea, like, hey, here's what I need to happen. Like on first issue covers, I like to try to make it kind of give that movie poster feel, not like the floating head, like the really good movie posters that they used to do. They don't do those much anymore. I don't want like floating heads, but let's get an iconic piece that tells us, like, when you can look at that, you see that character and you see what's happening, that you kind of get a feel for what you're about to pick up, and so most of these guys will send me 2 or 3 sketches and of things they like, and they'll say, here's why I like this and that and the other, and then I'll tell them the one I like, and we're on the same page, then boom, let's go. And so I guess as far as there are some times where I had to help a guy break a story out, and it's really just talking all that through. It's usually not editing on the page. It's figuring out the front end. So I don't envy an editor, a guy that's doing it on like multiple books for DC or Marvel.
Right.
That be like just so much harder. And that's a good thing about Image, though. Like, they throw you into the the lake, right? The deep end of the pool, and say, deliver your book. And so I learned a lot that way. And then, like, the books I've done at Dark Horse, I have an editor, and I think he's lucky to say that he doesn't have to do a whole lot of work, he or she, the 2 editors I've worked with there, because we hand them a book that's, when the pages are coming in, they're like, cool. Like, there's the only thing we're using them for is a copy editor, and which makes their job easier. So hopefully they want to work with me more. Right. So, but I think really, I have been blessed with just, I was lucky enough that I met a bunch of artists when they were young, and we got to be friends. And, so when I wanted to publish, and they also knew, there was the trust of, I'm not an idiot, right? I'm not going to do something that is going to embarrass them or whatever. So when we did the first book, and like the first guy that I called was Jason Pearson, who, he was a dear friend. But he was living in Portland, and I called him, and I knew if I could get him on board, that I could get the other guys, because he was the pickiest and the hardest to please. And he did not mince words and so we pitched him the story we wanted to tell. And kind of the way, I said, I want you to close it out. Like, I think you're the ace, and he's like, I'll do it. It's fun. It sounds like fun. I'd like to do something. We were going to do it in black and white. I was doing that to save money, but that also ended up being very appealing to a lot of these artists, because the guys that know that black is a color, they enjoyed slinging that ink. And so I got him on board, and then I called Cully, and he was really interested, and so and I was friends with Brian. I was probably closest friends with Cully and Jason at the time, but and Brian I was friends with, but we weren't like tight, Anyway, so we went to Doug and I went to breakfast. We drove to Atlanta, went to breakfast with Cully and Brian, and gave the pitch of what we wanted to do. And at the time I was saying, if you can only do 4 pages, we'll do 4 pages. I'll figure it out, and we kind of did the spiel, and I told him what I was planning with the book, and he never said a word. Like, he just listened. Cully was asking questions, but Brian wasn't saying anything. And he slid back, put his, fork down, and he said, here's what we're going to do. We're not going to do 4 pages or 6 pages, forget that. If you're going to do the book, you're going to do a chapter. So we're each going to do 11 pages, 4 artists, 11 pages. Doug, you're going to write each one of us a satisfying chapter. So we have the beginning, middle, and end of those 11 pages. And if we do that, it's going to work. And he was right. And that's what we use, that format. And it was great. And so we started doing these little 11-page short stories. And then sometimes the first full issue we did, Tom Coker, I wanted to do a Halloween special really bad. And Tom Coker, who from Black Monday Murders, he's been around forever, and he had just directed a horror movie called Catacombs. It was a lower budget movie that I don't know if it was Lionsgate, one of the studios put it out, but he was coming off of that, and but was interested in still wanting to do some comics. So he wrote a full 22-page horror, Gothic, Southern Gothic-y horror thing, and I don't know, I'm rambling, but I work with guys, it's fun. Like, we get to kick around ideas, and everybody delivers. It's been rare. There's been a few times where, I didn't feel like we slammed it home, and then there's been 1 or 2 times where an artist I really wanted to work with, maybe phoned it in a little bit, but because deadlines are hell, that's what, like with loose ends, circling back to that, which I always tell people, when I'm long gone, my grandkids, I hope that there's a tabletop hardcover of that book that will be sitting on the table at wherever, and they can say, well, this is what my dad or granddad or great granddad, like this book, because it's, to me, it's that special. Like I love all my babies, right? But that one is something. Like, you don't see work like that often, and that book should have gotten a lot more fanfare, I think, than it did. I don't know why that is. I mean, it's among artists, everybody, when that book came out, like, it was literally a sea change for the 12 gauge as well, because all these artists had gotten it and they were just in love with the book itself and the fact that I let them, do that book. Like, it didn't get picked up by anybody really. I mean, I did the book through 12 gauge on my own. I mean, that was on purpose. Like, I was publishing under the 12 gauge banner at the time. I think when we initially started doing it was going to be Image, because I was doing all my books there. But then I had broken off and was doing some stuff on my own, and we did it oversized. The only regret was that the fourth issue, Chris was really, really late, and but at the end of the day, when you look back a couple of years later, like we've had a few late books over the years. One because of a death in the family, one because Brian broke his hand playing
Oh,
volleyball.
wow.
And when he was drawing Gun Candy. It was a flip. We did a Ride flip book. Ride on one side, it was 48-page book, and this little Gun Candy thing on the back. And he was doing 22-page stories for it. When we solicited it, he was done drawing the first one, and he was like halfway done with the second one, and broke his drawing hand, so that delayed that book for a while. And then Loose Ends issue 4 was really late, and I always get on to Chris, who I love and adore, and would work with him. I've always told him, if I ever have a blank checkbook, like, I'll just let you do whatever you want, is just because. I always told him he punked me out because I told him he had to finish 3 issues before we could publish. And so he finished the first 3, and I solicited the books, and we're like, all right, let's start getting ready for the first issue to go to print. And he went back and started drawing it again. Like, I mean, he and Rico, because they were making it perfect. I thought it looked great. It was like, there's nothing wrong with this book, and he's still tinkering with every single page. So we lost our deadline on issue 4 as he tinkered with 1 through 3, and he did finally finish it. And I actually came back, like I said, I mentioned earlier, like, that was Latour's first thing that he ever wrote. Man, at the time, I knew him just through Heroes Con and hanging out with all these guys, and I'd hired him to do some coloring for me on a work for hire license. We did Coheed and Cambria, the band. They were doing some comics, and I don't even know how I got roped into that, but I needed a colorist, and Jason was looking for work, and he was a good colorist because he'd colored his own stuff in an Image book he'd done. And we were talking a lot, and he's like, "Hey, can I send you the script I've got?"
Okay.
And and I've taught Chris Bruner into drawing it. And I was like, "Well, shit, I already know I'm publishing this. Like, if I hope it's good, because if Chris is going to draw it, I'm going to publish it." But yeah, so that's I've just been really lucky. I mean, I can't say anything more than that. I'm just glad that I was able to bring some of these guys in and let them do their thing, and I get to watch. To me, there's nothing more fun than watching these pages come to life and seeing it go from script to the layouts, and the inks come in, and then you get to see the colorists, and all that is just a lot of fun for me still, even after almost 20 years. I still enjoy that just immensely, watching these guys create books. And as far as an editor goes, I mean, like I said, I'm more like a cruise director than anything, and most of the time.
Hey, I got a question. Then I got to get out of here. I know I had to make that drive. Let me see. I think I saw when I was looking up books. Is that book Hex? Is it Hexware? Is that under 12 gauge?
No, that's not one of mine.
Hexware. I think it's like someone, they have like a witch's hat on or a witch's outfit. That's not under 12 gauge.
No, that's not one of mine. I'm not familiar with.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. All right. Oh, I thought it was, because when I was doing research and stuff, like, I saw 12 gauge and that book came up. Hexware, maybe not.
Hexware.
Yeah, maybe not.
Hexware comic. Okay, I'm gonna look this up and see who does it. Oh, Tim Seeley. Well, I'm a big fan of Tim. Yeah, it's an Image book. Yeah, that must be one of those. Okay, I'm glad you brought this up, because it's a fairly new series. But yeah, not mine, but I like Tim. I missed this. So cool. That's a new book to add to my list. but
Oh,
no, it's not one I produced, unfortunately.
okay. All right.
Hey, I know you're gonna get ready to go, John, but before you go, good favorite books. I see something behind your shoulder, on your right shoulder as well. A graded book there.
Well, yeah, that's Body Bags #1. Jason's first big book, and I owned my comic book store back in those days, and I had him in for a signing, and that's when we kind of got to be pretty good friends. And I think we did like 250 books of issue 1 at my store signing, and he was blown away because he did some other store signings. They sold like 20 copies or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That was another book that, like, when I started 12 gauge, and one of the things I wanted to do was bring Body Bags back to convince Jason to do that again, and was able to do that, and we put out a couple of really good Body Bag stories. And I do have one old comic book there. You told me to get something.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking to see what you got, man, because if you own the store, that means I know you got some goodies.
Well, my big problem is I sold, when I opened up my comic store, I sold a lot of my collection to get the comic book store up and running, thinking that, I'll get all these books back. But like the new X-Men, all those old books, like, they're too expensive. I sold them to pay rent. But the first this Batman 286, that is the first book. This is a graded copy. That's the first book that my dad ever bought me,
with 2 Jokers.
Yeah, it was the Joker on. I always remember, like, I remember the cover vividly.
Yeah, that's an iconic cover. Yeah. That roller coaster cover.
Yeah, and we were actually the podcast I do. It came up, and Brian's like, "Do you have a copy of that?" And Stelfreeze, and I was like, "No." I said, "I've got the original one somewhere in a box, I'm sure, but I've read it every day when I was a kid, so it's probably destroyed." And he said, "You need to get one of those." And I got online and found. Actually ended up buying 2. I bought that one and another one that was similar grade, but they weren't that expensive, so it was cool. The other book I bought, which I don't have a good copy of, was a reprint, but it was The Death of Captain Stacy.
Mm-hmm.
It was a reprint of that my dad, and so those are the 2 books that hooked me on comics. So it's just a little piece of trivia. But
oh man, I appreciate it, because I know something with I think, see here, some of my first books, my brother, he's 12 years older than I am, so he would sometimes, we would stop by the 7-Eleven, he would say, I would say, "Oh, hey Sam, I want to try this book," or whatever. And he's so ever so often. So I can't recall what my first book off the stand was. I can remember some of the first ones. Was like remember the old Thing, the Marvel 2-in-1 with the Thing and somebody else. So one was Thing and Namor combined together, and I think they were fighting King Piranha or some crap like that. And some of the stuff with the Invaders, I think, like with the first, when they brought back Union Jack in the Invaders. And I think another Marvel 2-in-1, because I used to love the Thing, was when he teamed up with a Spider-Woman.
I don't remember that one, but I do remember those. I had a bunch of those back in the day. It's strange, like the Thing would never get his own title, teaming up with another. Like, so like there must have been good days. You just like walked in the editorial meeting, like, "Hey, let's just make mash up Thing and another person each, or another superhero, and get that greenlit and made." That's kind of crazy.
So, John, did you have any books you wanted to show before you check off, or did you have anything down there in the basement?
Yeah, I mean, I can grab right.
I know
quick.
You can.
I can grab right quick. Just 1 second. Let me see. All right.
And while we're doing that, so I'm gonna show you some stuff that I just got back from CGC, from the Baltimore Comicon. Yeah, so these came in, and then I've got another box from CBCS coming in tomorrow. So I got a bunch of books. I know you and Sean were dogging me out, like, "You got books graded or something."
You were there to spend some money. Yeah.
Yeah, I was. But this Invincible, let me see. I'll put on my document cam. How about this? I'll change camera so that way it's easier seen. Stand by. This Invincible This is number 44. This is the book where Invincible gets this woman does some things to him that are not pleasant. How about that? To make it as clean as I possibly can. Well, you can catch my drift when I say she does some things to him.
Yeah.
That came back. It's Invisible number 44, 9.4. And then Invincible number 4 came back as a 9.6. And then we've got Invincible number 19. And I believe this is the first appearance of the character called Battle Cat that was in the opening series of Invincible and Battle Cat pretty much whooped everybody's behind besides the dad, but just pretty much kicked everybody's behind. So that's the first appearance of Battle Cat. The 9.4. And then, much like the t-shirt I'm wearing, this is Amazing Spider-Man number 10. This is the first appearance of Spider-Punk. And this is the Gabriel Del Otto variant. I think it's a 1 for 25 or something like that. No, yeah, something like that. And then 2 more books. And I know John is. This is from the last series of Black Panther that Ta-Nehisi Coates wrote. And this was, I believe, the first appearance of a major character that he created called Tosin. And so this is another like a 1 for 25 or 1 for 50 variant or whatever. It was pricey to buy in the first place. This variant was, but it sadly it came back as a 9.6. I thought it would come back higher than that, but I'll live with it. And then go ahead.
Take it out. Would it actually come back as a 9.7 or 9.8? You know,
Exactly.
You don't know who's looking at that book when they grade those suckers.
And then lastly, first appearance of Power Girl and All-Star Comics number 58, 7.0.
Nice. I have not seen that in a long time.
Yeah, really those are the ones that came back. I've got some vintage books from at CGC as well. Some vintage books, and I'll put that on another show. But I'll get off this document cam. And John, what you got, man?
All righty. I knew it would come back a low grade, but I still have this is the very first comic book I ever bought, and yeah, Bill knows. A neighbor is the person that introduced me to comics in Miami. The neighbor, I had just moved to North Miami, and the neighbor, he had a ball. He said, "Hey, you want to throw this ball around?" So I said, "Yeah." So we're throwing the ball around. Then we got tired of that. 30 minutes later, he said, "Hey, I got some comic books. You want to take a look?" I really didn't know what they were at the time. I loved to read in elementary. So he takes me, we go into his house, into the room. He just pulls out his bottom drawer, and it's all full of Superman comic books. I hadn't seen anything like that. His bottom drawer was all Action Comics and Superman. So I read one, and yeah, like you said earlier, Kevin, you said that you saw it and you had to have more. That was me.
That's
and
correct.
The person that introduced me to comics, his brother actually went on to become the dentist for Don Shula, former head coach of the Miami Dolphins.
Yep, I'm a sports guy.
Yeah. So, but anyway, this is the first comic book I ever bought. I read it to pieces, but I had to have it graded so that I could read. It's Action Comics 436.
Wow, that's awesome.
That's I want to say June of '74. Yeah, of course it's a 2.5, but that's the first comic I ever bought. 20 cents. Man, they're a long way from 20 cents. Here's what it should look like if it's in pretty fair shape. Look at the color.
Wow. So you have your original copy? That's your original copy, the 2 point?
Yeah, this is my original copy. The first one I ever bought. Yeah, it's the actual book.
That's
I made the mistake of hanging it up on the wall and it faded in a frame. But yeah, this is my original. Yeah, the very first one I ever bought.
That's
Yeah,
cool. Very
I
cool.
held it all those years. But yeah, once again, yeah, it should look like that, even though
Nice.
that's not that high. All right, that's those. And then my mom, she was a nurse. She was working at a health department. She was a health department manager. She went to an old corner store one day. And I remember it was 78. It was 1978. She said, "Hey, I saw some old comic books on the rack. Do you want them?" "Yeah, I want them." So she said, "Let's go back there tomorrow." And the comic books had been on the rack from 68 to 78. They never sold on an old spinner rack. Let's see. So here's one of them.
Holy crap.
Yeah,
Sitting on a spinner rack for years.
yeah. And I was used to going to comic book stores, and I asked the guy. I said, because I thought it was going to be a markup, but they're just on a old corner store. I said, "How much are the comic books?" He went. He got the book. He looked at me like I had three heads. He said, 12 cents. It says right there, 12 cents. He goes, he, he said, "Do you still want it?" I go, "Yeah, I'll take all of them." So here's another one that was on that rack.
Oh, man, that's
It
insane.
was sitting, yeah, Captain America 101. This is actually considered, like, I think Captain America #2 for the Silver Age. Because
Yeah.
he had just come back not too long. Yeah,
Mhm.
because he was in introduced in Avengers #4.
Right.
And then they started Captain America. It continued, I want to say, from Tales of Suspense, and then it became Captain
Probably.
America #100, and then here's 101. Yeah, 101 sitting on that rack. Of course, it's yeah.
Wow.
And then this also was on that rack.
Oh, gee.
Wow.
Where's this store? Is it still in business? I need to go back.
No, that store. I think they. I asked my mom. I think they tore the building down. I think they. Yeah, but no, there was only a few books left on the rack. No, there's no more. There's some more that I have, but they're some old Army books, Hot Rod. Let's see what else, and then a few more, and then I'm gonna wrap it up. I think
we'll wrap it up too, because I know it's getting late for everybody. So
all right, so a few other just a few other books. Fear 19.
Man, I'm getting jealous.
That's that's the first Howard the Duck.
Oh, okay. I was just jealous over it being Man Thing, but Howard the Duck.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's the first Howard the Duck. Howard the Duck 1.
yeah, I do have that one.
Yep. What year was that?
What was that, 76 or 77?
76.
Yeah.
I want to.
Damn, I'm good.
Yes, 1976.
I remember having that book, but it no longer is around. Not my copy.
I had this graded because I was a big fan of Michael Golden.
Oh yes, love the ROM. I have his artist edition of the Micronauts sitting right.
They're gonna re-release. They're gonna put out. Oh no, they're gonna put out a ROM. They're gonna put out a ROM omnibus.
ROM Omnibus Volume 1 comes out early next year, and then Micronauts Volume 1 comes out I think next summer.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll get both of them.
I got to get that. I got the full run of ROM from 1 to end, every single issue.
I've got it too, and I went looking and I couldn't find about a couple of years ago. I know I have the whole run. I mean, I saw it maybe 10 years ago in one of my boxes, right? And I went to find it, and I can only find half. Where does it go? But I was a huge ROM fan. Micronauts. Oh my God.
The stories were excellent. Yeah, I have the full run of ROM. This nothing happened in this book. It's a 1 for 25. This is FF #4. It's not really a key. It's only graded because I think it's a 1 for 25, but I think I found it for $4.
Oh yeah, that white
That's
costume. Yeah, yeah. Hickman run.
Yep. This book I hunted for. It's this the last one I'm going to show. It's Superior Spider-Man had a 1 for 25 for issue. Oh wait, or was it a 1 for 50? I don't know. It's a 1 for 25 or a 1 for 50. I hunted forever for this book. I have a regular copy, but then I found one that this one is signed by Stan Lee.
Oh wow, that's cool.
Oh, you got a 9.8 on that sucker too.
Yeah.
I want to show you. I will show you one more book.
Help yourself. Take your time, man.
All right. So yeah,
I love that.
That's that.
That's a great collection. Now, I just want to show you what somebody that's dumb does to a book. So when I was a retailer, they used to have, there was two big distributors, Diamond and Capital City, and my store was a Capital City store, and they had a big show in Chicago for all the retailers to come in, and it was sort of like a trade show. Like all the publishers would come in, but it was like, hey, here's what we got coming out over the next 6 months or to the year. Like here's our stuff, and they do presentations and whatnot. Anyway, I had discovered Bone, which I just got enthralled with.
Yeah.
And I had, through another comic shop that I was affiliated with, we would trade stuff back and forth. And the guy that ran that shop he was ordering everything. So when I started telling him how fan I was of Bone, he's like, I think I've got maybe some of the original, like, and I don't know what issue it was, but it was just fairly getting new started. Anyway, I bought like 1, 2, and 3 from him, whatever the book value was at the time, which wasn't much. But I went to the Capital City convention, the retailer convention, and Jeff Smith was going to be there because he was listed cartoon books thing. So I took my Bone #1, first printing.
Oh wow!
Oh, first print. Yep.
You can't really tell on the camera but he signed it, and
I see it's like silver or something.
Yeah, it's silver pen, but he wrote right there, to Kevin. So it's got my name on it, and I don't know what that does to the value, but I told him, I was like, hey, just so you know, I'm not going to sell this in my shop. This is for me. You can, put to Kevin on there. And I had him on our podcast a couple of years ago, and I was laughing because I looked it up. I haven't looked it up in a while, and it was worth a couple of grand, whatever.
Oh yeah.
And here I have made my copy got my name on it, like writing his name on the bottom of his toy in Toy Story. But yeah, I'm curious, like I'm not going to sell it, but like, I've got,
but that's in beautiful shape too. You get it graded, man. That looks like at least a 9.6.
It's in good shape.
Yeah, it can be authenticated by CBCS.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, it's I don't know how hard that is to do, but
they can do it for you, man. Just take it to CBCS and they'll knock it out for you. Because I've done books like that. I had that I bought and had Jim Steranko sign at Comicpalooza years before I took it and submitted it to CBCS. But they did the signature verification, and yeah.
Good to know. Yeah, I joked with my oldest daughter, and I was like, "Oh, I probably could have helped pay a little bit more of your tuition, but I wrote my name on this book, and so I don't think it's worth anything now." But I still, I mean, I used to be a much bigger collector. I think after owning the store and everything, and selling so much of my old stuff, I mean, I still got a ton of stuff, but I am like, now that space is kind of an issue, and I keep bringing up college because I got 3 kids and I'm trying to, and college has gone up a lot.
Yes.
Like when I started saving for college versus what it actually costs now, it's like quadrupled in price. To even go to state school, it's and that's a whole nother conversation of it is actually worth it. I don't know. My son and I talk all the time about learning to trade because you might make a lot more money that way. These days.
Sometimes it is.
Yeah, but I think I might like stuff that's got a sentimental value. I don't ever plan on getting rid of. Like I've got a lot of original Star Wars figures on the card. I've got 9 of the original 12.
Nice.
That are those are I don't want to part with those. But I've got a lot of stuff too that's like just worth money that doesn't really mean much to me. I should probably start trying to get it graded and sell to help pay, create some new comics with that money, right?
That too. That too. I mean, yeah, you have inspired me to do some other things, man. And yeah, we should talk. We should talk further. I know that so far as ideas and books that I started writing or whatever, you might be impressed. So anyway,
I'm happy to read.
but hey, man, I don't want to hold you much longer because I know it's 8 o'clock your time, and you've given us about an hour and maybe an hour and a half of your time. So I just want to say I'm grateful so much for your making time with us, and any parting words you want to share.
No, look, appreciate you guys. Glad we met. One of those chance things, and worked out really great. Happy to, glad, happy to be invited and got to come here and talk comics. And it's always fun to do. So appreciate you guys having me on. And yeah, as far as 12 gauge, you can go to our website right now, but it is a little wonky. Hopefully in a couple of weeks it'll be refreshed and look new again. But it is still fairly functional, just not all.
It's very functional. Yeah.
But yeah, we do have, if you do hit our social media, you can do our link in bio on Instagram and Twitter, Facebook. There's obviously links, but we do have our two new books, the Narco graphic novel, which is, like I said, it's a Hitchcockian thriller, which is hard to pull off in comics. But this was an idea that, like that vampire thing I was telling you guys about, that I had years ago, and it took Doug Wagner, and I talked about it for years, and he finally he cracked a way to make it work, and I think we pulled it off really well. But there's still some copies available. We did the books at the printer, so we set our print run, and we have a little extra, and then also that plastic hardcover and some backlist stuff. So it's at our Backer Kit store right now. So yeah, go check that out. And then my podcast is called Shot by Shot. We haven't put out a new episode recently, but it's good if you like artists and listening to their process. We do a lot of comic book artists and writers, even had a movie director, an actor, and stuff too. Like, it's kind of fun. So go check us out. We're on all the places, just at Shot by Shot, Shot by Shot cast with an X in the middle.
Okay.
But yeah, Brian Stelfreeze is the real star of the show.
He's on there as well.
Yeah, it's a podcast. I told him I wanted to start a podcast. Asked if he would be a guest on the first episode, and then as we talked about it, I was really just trying to get Brian to do a podcast.
Right.
And so I convinced him, to do it by being a guest on the first one, and then he, becoming basically the host. So I kind of act like I do with making comics. I let Brian do the work, and then I kind of keep things on. I know I've got a producer. Our producer, a guy named Sean Edgar, is also a co-host, and he went to work full time for Distillery, which is a comic imprint. So we haven't been able to. We got to get back to doing podcasts, but we've got a pretty good. There's a lot to listen. We've got hours and hours of content already out. So yeah, check us out. We're on all the Apple Music or Apple iTunes.
We'll find you. Absolutely.
Go check that out, and always love to hear get more people to find it, just because listening to Brian talk about art is just something that everybody that loves comics should do.
Completely, man. When I sat with his booth, man, and the time he would take to talk with any inspiring artist and the tips that he was giving, man, Brian is a very kind person with that, and just to listen, regardless of whether it's coloring or inking or what, the whole thing he's amazing.
Yeah, he really is, and so he gets to talk with a lot of great industry pros, and to hear them talk is for me just like, man, I can do this all day. So
yeah,
go check that out.
I sure will, man. Because and if you get a chance to talk to Brian, please let him know. I'm still trying to get him on here, but I probably would probably try to tune in and become more astute on his work, because Brian he's got like several omnibuses, I guess. I don't know if it's on the buy, but of work, but holy crap. I mean, the more I dig into his stuff, it's cool. And he's been at it for a long time.
He's been around a while. And
hey, I hate to interrupt. Hey, Kevin, I've enjoyed it. I got to get on out of here. We'll call. We will talk. And thank you so much, Kevin. I enjoyed everything.
No, the
All right.
pleasure,
Yeah, we're gonna
pleasure's
end
all mine.
soon. But yeah.
All right.
Okay, John.
Okay. All right. Bye.
Bye-bye. Yeah, we'll end soon, Kevin. But yeah, Brian stuff. Go. You were talking about Brian stuff. Go ahead.
No, I just say like he's the ultimate artist, and I use that term. You know, to me that's a in no way. I mean, some people are super wildly popular, who I don't think are very good artists.
Mm-hmm.
And you got guys like Brian that obviously he's very popular. And he's Black Panther and his long run on Batman, doing those covers. I think he did 50 sequential Batman covers, which I believe is still the record.
Mm-hmm.
But he's just such a talented artist, and the fact that just to get to watch him work and make stuff that I've been associated with, but at the same time, every time he draws something, it's like there's not many guys that can tell a story the way he does. Like he's a master. He gives a master class on storytelling every time he does sequential pages, and we did the Thomas River, which was the spy book that we put out through Kickstarter during COVID.
I'm gonna get that one. I gotta find that one. I looked at some of the pages on your site, man. I'm blown away. I gotta get that book.
Yeah, he's I've been trying to get him to do the next one. It's like with Brian, you got to catch when the wave is right. But he also stays but he does a lot of stuff outside of comics too, like commercial or working for Disney on or I guess it was Sony on the Spider-Verse movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like he goes away for 6 months. You're like, what are you doing? He's like, I can't tell you. It's an NDA.
Right.
And he shows up. Oh, I've been working on Spider-Verse. But yeah, we need to do another one of those hopefully before too long. That was a really fun, we love action movies and try to put those on paper. That's kind of all the stuff that Brian does with 12 gauge. It's all action centric, and because he really gets to flex his storytelling muscles and Thomas River was the height of his game, though, I would have to say.
Yeah, I'm going to look for that. I just bumped into it by mistake just before you chimed in or just clicked in. So, but I definitely wrote it down because it's one I want to obtain and read and probably even get graded. So yeah.
Yep.
But okay.
Let me jump and we take care of some other business tonight. But again, it's great being on. I'm happy to come on again, later on.
Please, yeah. Absolutely, man. We'll be glad to have you back, and please have a good night. Our best to your family and everything that you're doing at your business. And thank you again. Thank you, Kevin.
All right, man. Have a good
evening. Have a good night.
Thanks.